This is another edit from that shoot I did down to Nannup, Baling Up of the fog. So you may have seen the video that I've done, the behind the scenes. That's over on my YouTube channel if you haven't already had a look. Now, in that video you'll see the after of a couple of the images that I've shot, and this is the editing of that. So there's one here which is I quite liked, and it was this beautiful hill just sticking out through the fog. So let's try and make this a little bit more interesting. So again, it's in camera raw, and I'm looking at what I can do to make it pop. I'm looking at my exposure here. I'm just going to pull that up a bit. You can see that there's a fair bit of room there to play. And then I'm going to look at my clarity. Clarity is something that really pulls out the detail, and dehaze. It really just adds something to it. Now, like this area here is a little bit dark, so I'm going to open up the shadows, and I'm going to mess around with my black point as well, because when you open up the shadows it does tend to make it a little bit flat. So I'm just going to add a little bit more in the blacks there, and maybe look at a little bit more clarity, and then some vibrance. It needs a bit of color in there. So there's a fairly easy one to edit. It's nothing too offensive. This is a good starting point. I can look at my temperature because it's a little bit blue. I'm just going to bring that across a little bit to the right, and then maybe just a tickle out of that magenta there, and then again look at my vibrance. Just add a bit more vibrance through there, and it's starting to look pretty good. Alright, well, let's go into Photoshop from there. Actually, before we do that, let's go down and look at our detail. I'm going to zoom into 100%. It's looking reasonably sharp. Let's bring that up to around the 100 mark, and again I'm going to hold down the Option key and click on the masking, and just make sure that none of the sharpening is being applied to the sky or the fog areas. That looks pretty good. How's that looking down there? Yep, it's nice and clean, smooth. This is shot on the Leica SL2, which is a lovely little camera with my 90 to 280mm lens, Leica lens, and it's just superb. You can see it's at f6.3 at 1/30 of a second. Okay, let's go and open that up in Photoshop. Okay, F on the keyboard and Command minus just to give us a bit of space. So I can see that this looks like the horizon's a little bit crooked. That was my bad. I'm going to go C for crop. I'm going to choose my crop that I like, which is the 3 to 1.65, and that's almost like a 2 to 1 ratio basically. And I'm going to look at just bringing that up a little bit, and then fixing up this issue with the horizon. I can see it's just a little bit off. Just hit return like that, and that's pretty good. Obviously I like that crop. I like that where the hill is sitting. Let's just go back now to this area here, and we're going to fix that up. Now I could just do a quick hit J on the keyboard, which is a spot healing tool, and fix that up, but I'm just going to show you a probably better way, because I don't know about the spot healing tool. I think it's broken. I don't know if anyone else has noticed it, but you try to clone things out and it's putting this really strange texture back in where you're trying to clone the area, and it used to do that before in the past, but now it seems to be doing it again. It stopped doing it for a while. So yeah, you got to watch that. Just keep an eye out. I don't know if Photoshop's done something to it, or whether I've done something to it. I don't know. So I'm just going to do a marquee selection, just up here. You can just hit L on the keyboard, which is the shortcut, and Shift L to scroll through until you get the tool that you want. You do this on a background layer or a flattened layer, and you go up to Edit and down to Content Aware Fill, and I'll just move that across, and I'm just going to paint with green over and around that area, just because that's what I want to fill in. And you can see it's just disappeared really well there. So click OK. Deselect, Command D or Control D, and we're just going to flatten that because it puts it up as a new layer. So that's got rid of that, and it looks perfect. I'm going to add a little bit of tallness to this image. So I'm going to go Command A, Command T, and I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. I don't want to lose too much of that sky, and I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Hit return, and let's just have a look what that's done. So flat, tall, flat, tall. So I quite like that. That's a bit better. Command D to deselect. Going to look at where my white and black points are. I can see that I can actually add a lot more light overall. So I'm just going to pull that white point across, and the black point I'm not 100% sure yet on moving that. I quite like it where it is. So I turn that on and off. You can see it'll just add a little bit of extra light through there. But I want to add a bit more light on the tops of these clouds. So I'm going to do a curve adjustment layer. I'm going to grab the hand, and I'm just going to click on this area here and just bring that up like so to lighten it all up, and then grab the left hand point there and just bring that across just to lighten but also add a bit of contrast. Then I'm going to invert it, Command I or Control I. B for brush, white is my foreground color. Brush about that size and a low opacity. I'm going to click once, hold down the Shift key, move the cursor across to the other side, click again, and I'm just going to add a little bit more light through that foreground there, like so. Maybe get a little bit smaller brush, 10% opacity, click once over here and just run across that line there, just to add a little bit of something through that layer as well. So turn that on and off. You can see it's just given that layer of fog a bit of a lift. And I'm going to do another curve adjustment layer. This time I'm going to grab the hand and I'm going to grab this area here and just drag that down. It's looking a little bit ordinary. I want to just darken it and increase the contrast a little bit. And then I'm going to go G for gradient tool, hold the Shift key down and click and drag down, and that will just add a little bit of darkness to that sky just to bring it down a little bit. Let's see how that's looked. It's probably a bit too much, so let's go start up here and work down to there. So we're just going to just solve that problem there at the top. That looks pretty good. Let's put up a little canvas around there. Command Option C, and let's just put a 6-inch border, and that's looking rather pretty. I think that's a nice looking image. And I'm going to go now and just do a mid-tone contrast adjustment. Let's have a look at that. Hit tab on the keyboard to bring our tools back, and I'm going to flatten that out. Let's save it. Command Shift S will save it into my pictures folder, and it's going to be BR 0012L, and save. I think we could do a little bit of mid-tone contrast, but we've got to be careful where we put it. So let's go over to our shape plugin, click on global, and you can see the before and after. That's before and that's after. It's added a nice contrast in the foreground there, but too much I think in that. I mean, I don't mind the sky being like that, but it starts to get a little bit dark and crispy, and it should be a bit more soft down that area. So let's click on a layer mask, create a layer mask, G for gradient, and we're just going to click and drag up just to make the effect only apply to the clouds in the foreground mostly, because the hill should be a little bit softer, a little bit lighter, because it's in the distance. if you whack too much contrast in, it then looks, you don't get that depth. You know, you want to try and make this look as deep as possible. In the video that I've done, the behind the scenes video, I've got a nice bit of video footage as I'm flying towards this scene. This is obviously shot with my drone, my Phantom 4 Pro. Okay, flatten that off. I'm pretty happy so far with that. Let's go into our LUTs. Let's do a 3D LUT adjustment layer, and I'm going to just look at the saturation one. Just ping in a hell of a lot of saturation there. And I always do this just to see what effect it has. Drop the opacity back. Do I want to use that LUT? I think not, because it's adding too much color to everything. So let's get rid of that, and we'll just go back and do a hue saturation adjustment layer. Click the hand and just find one of these reddy colors. I'm just going to add a little bit of saturation to that, and perhaps maybe look at the hue. We want it a little bit less red, a little bit orange. So it's before and after. So the clouds have remained the same, but we've just got a nice color happening there, which is pretty good. We could select the yellows, because I think there's a bit of yellow in the sky there, and see what it does. But it's probably, we could probably have a little bit of yellow there, but it's before and after. I think that is just about right. Let's flatten that. Command Shift E, Command Option C to put a border around. Let's make a bigger border this time. Let's go 8 inches by 8 inches. Tab on the keyboard, and there is our image. It's quite pretty. Let's go back and see where we, if we can go back to our history. It's going to, I'll add a snapshot there. It's going to change a bit because of the fact that we've cropped it. So that's before, that's after. So there's not a huge change, but enough to make the image more appealing. You know, we've straightened it up. We've added a bit more light through there and a bit of color, and we've also made it a little bit taller. So I reckon that's looking pretty good. Let's save that. And I reckon that is a wrap. Cheers, guys.